You are listening to the Brain Software Podcast. This is episode 196. And today you'll discover that life is a series of continuums. And we can make our lives more awesome by choosing where on these continuums we want to sit. So stay tuned.
Disclaimer. This is only a podcast, but one that can change everything. You listen at your own risk, although everything will be okay. Lucci.
We are podcasting from the hypnotic world epicenter, Toronto, Canada. I'm Chris Thompson, and today, Mike Mandel and I are going to dive deep into one great way to evaluate how you're living your life. And you'll see how easy it can be to change things once you're aware of all of this. We don't offer a grand prize, but there will be an inappropriate consolation prize.
Hey, Scro. Welcome back to Oz, Toto. What's happening, dude? I've been hanging out on Mars with Elon Musk, dude. I've been working on using cold fusion to deplete the last of the radioactivity from the war with the spaceman, dude. You know, we built the asteroid belt and everything. You know, I'm always trying to figure out whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know.
These are days of victory. So welcome. It is episode 196. This is Mike Mandel. I'm Chris Thompson. We're getting the ball rolling. We're going to jump right in like Jack the In-Jumpers. Yeah. All right. So before
Jack
we get going, we decided, okay, we're doing a lot of great content here on the personal development side of things. And today's discussion about continuums, I think, is going to be a transformational way of thinking about so much. Now, before we do, let's do the 3 think tank words, which of course we then slot into the conversation as however we see fit to inspire more creativity.
And we can do that because we're at work right now.
All right, so let's go through them.
Okay, well, the first word generated randomly by the Savo Bukacek think tank is transportation.
Transportation, otherwise known as transportation,
yes,
to those of us who speak proper English.
Yes.
But we don't like to always speak proper English because it's more fun to say transportation.
Sounds more
So
important.
what does that make me think? Well, interestingly, because when you think of, we're going to be talking about continuums, and a continuum, you could think of a highway as a continuum. You can go from north to south, or east to west, or whatever.
Trucks on a highway.
Yeah, there you
Trucks
go.
in Ottawa
honk, honk.
on a highway. Honk, honk.
So transportation on a highway, you're moving along a continuum. So in terms of space, right? So that could be
space.
That could be good. What does it make you
traveling
think of?
through space?
Ooh.
Any sort of
Earth
transportation.
to Mars.
To me, yes. So to me, transportation means not just traveling, but maybe moving something else. So we're going to move these ideas, and I want to say that I checked the plural of continuum, and it is either continuums or continua.
Yeah,
but continuums
prefer.
is longer, so it's equally good.
I say continuums because it just seems easier.
So do I, buddy.
Next one we've got.
So we're moving forward. We're transporting this podcast. Grandmother is the next one.
Next word. Okay, grandmother. So when I think of grandmother, I think of advice from someone who has lived a lot longer than the person whose grandmother it is,
and is now in a coffin undergoing transportation in a hearse.
Possibly. That's just really sick, though.
But it's not.
Somebody,
the death rate's 1 per person.
Grandmothers usually say, "Oh, eat, you're too skinny," that kind of stuff. So usually grandmother has wisdom and has been alive for a long time, knows stuff that you don't know, and can offer you some good advice.
Wisdom, but not necessarily wizened. MCA, Michael C. Anthony, he has this weird thing he does based around grandmothers. His grandma, Sally, would always force food on him. He didn't want. She could eat a whole pizza, and she would give him a piece of pumpkin pie.
That explains
so
much.
if somebody ever offers him food now, Mike, do you want a burger? He'll just yell at them, "No, Grandma Sally," even though they haven't got a clue what he's talking about.
That's funny.
He'll say to total strangers.
No,
the last
Grandma
word
Sally. All right,
is
next
ambition.
Well, that's a good one because ambition can be part of the continuum discussion that we're going to have, whether you have a lot of ambition or none at all and just want to lie on the couch.
Just sit there dinking around like Jack the frickin' round dinker.
In fact, I think ambition is a really nice word because it really does imply the level of effort you're going to put into something is going to be determined by the amount of ambition that you have in the first place.
And the assumed reward that will come in as a result.
Right.
Well, that's interesting because Ambition does not have to be selfish. It can be selfish, but you can be ambitious to have a really good life because of how you can benefit your family or other people.
Yeah.
So,
and you know,
you're sounding defensive.
Remember, the cool thing about selfishness is everybody is selfish. And I say, reminder, right? If you are philanthropic and you give away a lot of money because you're Jack the Money Boy or whatever.
Yeah.
Why are you giving away money? It makes you feel good in some way.
And you can buy shellfish.
Right? There you go. And you can buy shellfish, oysters. But if you're giving away money, it's not because it's harming you. It's because you're feeling good about it. If you're giving gifts, if you're giving your time, if you are stealing from someone, that's the bad kind of selfish. You're doing someone harm.
Well, that's criminal.
Right? But if you go out and help someone repair their roof, you're giving up your time. Why are you doing that? You would imagine it's because it makes you feel good in some way.
It's always a benefit somewhere, isn't there?
Remember, we did an episode on the different needs
and I haven't
models.
Forgotten, even though I'm at a very
You don't even know what I was going to say.
Not at all. The interesting thing is I've already invoked my superpower of not caring.
Yes, I know.
So let's
Let's
get to the talking points. Okay, I'm going to let you run the show on this one, buddy, because you came up with most of the material. I think this is pretty solid, and I'll throw in the occasional remark and won't laugh.
All right, I came up with. Whoa! I rang the bell there by accident.
Stuff really comes out.
I was the one who proposed this idea. Then we had a good discussion about it. I think it's a useful series of continuums that we'll discuss, and hopefully the challenge is we'll point out a bunch of these different continuums that life operates on, and we want to hear from you as to what other ideas you've come up with, because we're just coming up with a few here.
Just throw them out there,
Life, we're going to say life is a series of continuums, and when we're aware of them, it gives us a better opportunity to think about how we want to change our lives, because we're aware of this.
You're giving it a perspective, and then we go, oh, this sliding scale, this applies in a lot of ways.
Yes, and I accidentally learned this through my father when he would teach me about science or math or whatever, and I'll get into a couple of basic examples. He never meant for me to think of it this way, but it expanded in my mind, and I think it's very useful. But anyway, let's start with some natural life continuums that already exist, just so that you understand what we mean. Either a spectrum or a continuum. So think about in physics, for example, you've got the frequency spectrum. So you can have at the bottom end of the spectrum.
Right, you're going to have low frequency sound waves. And you're going to go right up to ultraviolet and then radio waves, X-rays
or whatever.
So
and that's an infinite.
One can think.
Well, I suppose actually there's zero. It has to stop at zero. There's no negative frequencies. And then there's this infinity, theoretically.
Right. And apparently the lowest frequency human beings can hear
is about 20 hertz.
It's the rustling of leaves.
Yeah?
Yeah, our hearing runs typically from 20 hertz to 20,000.
And then some animals can hear like really low frequency, and actually don't they use
Barry
that
White's voice
for sending sound waves down through the sonar?
Yeah, but that's gone beyond sound waves. Now that's shock waves.
Oh, is it? Is it really low frequency? Yeah. So it's like we're talking, instead of 20 hertz, we're talking, I don't know.
So we have
something
this
very
immense
low
continuum. And as human beings, we're only aware of a very narrow bit of this spectrum.
We are.
Right?
We're exactly. But that's a natural world continuum, and it's easy to think about. Another simple example, anyone who's studied any math has probably heard of the idea of calculus, and when we have big things, we can break them down into smaller and smaller chunks till we get to infinitesimally small chunks, which is the basis.
Infinitesimally.
Thank you. I'll just let you say that word.
Right.
The basis of calculus is bringing things down to their smallest possible chunks so that they're so freaking small, they basically don't exist. And anyway, that's another continuum.
That's actually interesting. That's the best I've ever heard calculus explained.
And then we've got in our world, if you think about the continuum of the size of things, you've got atoms or even electrons, or if you want to break it down into some of the quantum stuff, I suppose.
Right.
But
so
you've got
subatomic particles.
If you just think about the Niels Bohr model, man, you've got electrons, protons, neutrons, you got atoms, you've got molecules. You got cells, you've got organisms, you've got, what did I write down here? Bodies and cities and continents and planets in the universe. Like you could go out to, I don't know how big the universe is, but that's a continuum. So
nice. So size becomes a continuum as well, down from the extremely minute up to the massive.
Right.
Red giant stars and things like that.
So those are some physical world continuums, but that doesn't really help us live a better life.
No.
But it's just the model to think about. So what are some things? Let's basically spend the rest of the podcast now talking about different continuums that exist in life and how we can think about.
Okay, now I want to offer you one. You're going to think I'm dicking around, and I'm not.
Bet.
He's hypersensitive
serious versus joking.
Hypersensitive to this today. So I'm going to have to frame this so he knows I'm being serious. Chris, what about something like we talk about in graphology, when you have an inflated stem on a D, like a loop in it, that is sensitivity to criticism.
Yes.
And that is on a continuum too.
Oh,
because
sure.
some people, you have a huge inflated stem on your D.
I like
you
that.
even look at them the wrong way. What were you thinking? What would you mean by that?
Yeah.
You're thinking something bad. And then you get other people, a tiny, tiny loop on the stem means they can be sensitive to other people. Now, is that on a continuum? The people who don't give a rip what other people say, right to those who go into a freaking
In
rage.
fact, it's your superpower. You don't care, right?
No, but that's not sensitivity to criticism.
No, but it's the same idea, because if somebody criticizes you, you either care a lot or you care not at all.
Or somewhere in between.
Yes, exactly. And
so
that's what we mean
towards
by
the not
continuum.
at all is the, okay, that's interesting. There may be some truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the other end is, who do you think you are? You think that?
That's actually, we should add that
knows?
to our list, because it's not on our list. You just came up with it on the fly.
I wanted
So
to
we've
contribute.
got the continuum of how much do you care about criticism, or just in general, I almost slipped into
No, you didn't though. You stopped it. That was good.
caring about things in general, but caring about criticism can absolutely be a continuum.
Well, and it can cripple you if it's too high.
Because if you break down and feel like crap every time somebody gives you the most minor constructive criticism, let's say,
Right.
you'll be too afraid to take action.
Totally. You just made a really good point. And AC/DC. Sure.
Oh, right.
You made a really good point there, because I don't think either of us realize this. On that continuum of sensitivity to criticism, what other people think, the one end you have not at all, and the other end you have hyper
you're
annoyed about it.
Yeah.
Either one of which will wreck your life. Either one of which will wreck your friendships. Because if people are criticizing you and saying important stuff, and you just don't give a toss, that'll piss them off too.
Accidental discovery when I discovered this idea of continuums because of conversations with my father over the years. I realized that usually either end of the continuum, if there is an end, if it's infinite or whatever, but when you think about it in your mind, both ends usually suck. They're not good. So if you don't care at all about what somebody else thinks,
it just becomes nugatory.
You may as well just live a life of solitude and not have any friends and not have any relationships, because you don't care.
And people will wind up treating you with absolute suspicion as a result of that.
And at the other end of the spectrum, if you care so much that it paralyzes you and you're unable to act because you're worried what everyone will think about every little thing, well, what'll that result in? I mean, almost the same, right? You'll be alone and unhappy.
Naturally, Gilbert O'Sullivan. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, there's so many things fall into these. Now, you've got here giving versus receiving. And I find that interesting, because if we're looking at giving versus receiving on a sliding scale, at the one end, we have somebody who just gives like Jack the frickin' Giver.
Why? Because everyone does things for selfish motivations. And if I give and I feel great, then I'll give a lot.
Those are really effective hand gestures.
But if all, there we go.
Now,
if all I ever do is give, though.
The other end of the spectrum, we have take. Now, here's the point. People who just want from others take, like Jack the Bastard. Oh, there's a new one.
Jack the Bastard. I like that.
So if you get in the middle of the spectrum, are we saying
there's a balance?
Is it a balance, or you're not doing either?
I think it's a balance, because every action on its own is evaluated and has some merit. You're either allowing someone to give something to you, or you're allowing yourself, you're either giving to someone else, or you're allowing someone to give to you
and receiving it richly.
And I suppose the other, we talked about, the selfishness of someone who steals. It's the same thing. If you're constantly stealing from others, never giving, you're a bad person.
So on the sliding spectrum, where do you steal? How much do you steal?
Sometimes I steal an extra bite of food, when there's like an extra pizza or whatever,
an extra slice of pizza. My paycheck. An extra $5.
But it actually makes sense to think about, if all you ever do is give, then you're kind of not allowing other people the pleasure of giving to you. You're always the giver, never the receiver. And other people feel good by giving. So if you're the one always Christmas morning giving, and you never get anything, you're denying other people to have that feel good. I gave a gift to this person, or I gave if we think of love languages, for example, giving quality time, acts of service, whatever it is.
Or I thought you say gonorrhea, the gift that keeps on giving.
That's hilarious.
I've heard.
So giving versus receiving, I think it's useful to think about it which one are you weighted more towards in life? Are you giving more? Are you receiving more? Or do you have what you think is the perfect
reasonable balance?
And there's no correct answer here. That's the beauty
best
of it.
answer. It's the Brado question. How's that
working out? Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So
now, it's always the test of a model is its usefulness, John Grinder. And so we determine, is the model we are applying working for us?
Yeah. And hopefully by being aware of this, that you can think of as a continuum, you can look at it and go, do I need to give more? Do I need to receive more?
Yeah.
Or am I perfectly happy? Maybe a lot of these models that we're going to throw out at you, you're totally happy.
Yeah, and that's fine too. It means everything's working out for you. Now, focus on this. You said towards versus away. Now, this is intriguing.
Yeah.
Because you can even look at this on a continuum, others versus self. Okay. Now, Enneagram 2s, like our good friend Lisa, and my next door neighbor, Kim, and a few other people we know. Kim, boys going up, making it a question, which you do in Greek, actually. You put a semicolon at the end of it.
Yeah, you're studying Greek.
Yes, I am. Now, so having said that, their focus is so other-focused that they can let their own lives slide. It's
a two, in general. They're always out there helping other people. They're the ones
you phone
people,
them at 3 a.m. because your apartment's flooded and they drive in from the other end of the city and help
in a
you mop
way,
it up.
it's like giving versus receiving. They're giving their time or effort.
Well, I guess
or
that is it. It is, yeah.
It's similar,
because
but
it's other-centered.
What you spending your time thinking about? What are you spending your mental time focused on? Yeah, are you spending your conscious thought processes thinking about other people or thinking about yourself? I suppose that's exactly the way to think about it. And if you're constantly thinking about self, maybe you're going to come across as selfish, right, to other people. Whereas if you come across as all I ever do is think about other people and their lives, maybe you're letting your own life slip away from you in some way. Maybe whether your health or your financial self or
your financial self,
your financial life. Yeah, your financial self. There's the parts of your life that you could be letting slip away from being awesome. Well, that's the thing.
And if you put so much focus on making your own life work, you generally tend to exclude other people to the same degree, unless you're one of those people who likes having others around purely so you can brag about how well your life is working, which is exactly what we see with social media, right? Everyone has a perfect life. Everyone spends their entire summer walking around Spain in cathedrals and eating in fine French restaurants, and nobody dispenses the reality that we all have flawed lives. Yeah. And when I say we all have flawed lives, I mean all of you have flawed lives.
You know, this doesn't really fit in with the idea of a continuum, but it's such a good point that let's spend a moment on it.
All right.
Yeah.
He says, reaching for the coffee.
What do we call it? Self-narrative. That's it. When I'll just let you take a sip of that so that I don't cause you to laugh and spit it out.
He puts the coffee down and decides to return to it later, then turns to Chris and says, go ahead.
So there's if you wanted to put this on a continuum, it could be the internal representation versus the external presentation. That might be the continuum.
Clarify that. That's interesting. So I'd like to hear more about this, he says.
Internal representation would be something that is purely internal to me. So if I'm thinking about my family life or my career or whatever it is.
Are you talking about a four-tuple? You're getting a visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and an auditory, digital.
Anything about how happy I am, what I'm worried about, all these different aspects. Let's say it's your family life, right? So you go onto Facebook, let's say. Yeah. And somebody posts their happy family pictures and they're out on vacation and they're doing these wonderful, everyone's smiling. And you think, man, I wish my family life was more like that because my kids, they're just rude to me all the time. And you're now comparing an external presentation of someone else's life to your internal representation of your own representation life. Of their own, Now, most people don't send out photos on Facebook that are, they're pissed off kids, they're mad at them, or whatever it is. I'm trying to come up with a good example here.
I think the examples you do run into of the negative is when someone has to go for a hospital procedure or something. They'll often post from the hospital room, but they're doing it to show, hey, I'm okay to my friends.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Or I'm recovery. At death's door. Come in and check if you're in my will. And I'm not.
They wouldn't normally show a picture of themselves. I don't know. Hey, I have coffin. I'm sepsis. I'm about to die or whatever.
In a coffin. With the grandmother, a double coffin. So you can be in the coffin with your own grandmother in a hearse, and you got transportation. I've worked transportation again.
How we do this is insane. Obviously, we have to laugh at some of the nasty things in life so that we can
don't explain
not take ourselves too seriously. But you look at Facebook, you look at wherever it is on social media. People tend to present the best external representation, and then other people look at it and go,
oh, my life sucks.
Oh, my life kind of sucks
because
in comparison.
it's a normal life.
Yeah. So realize that other people are doing that, and their internal representation of their own lives is not the same as what they're externally presenting to you.
Okay, so that again,
that is a continuum.
It is tied in. There is a continuum aspect here. Now, what about you've got here narrow versus wide?
Narrow versus wide.
Get that one.
Oh, fool! We didn't really finish the towards versus away, so we should.
I thought we lost interest in that.
Yeah, we lost. Maybe you did. I'm going to move towards that while you move away from it.
Turn that into self versus other. That was
what we can do is we can make this fairly quick. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're good. We've got plenty of time here. So the quick version of towards versus away, what that was intended to be, Mike, is when you teach the idea of present state versus target state.
Okay.
So what do people tend to want to move away from? The present state problems that they're dealing with. What do people want to move towards? The target state, the good stuff that they want.
Right.
So we're all motivated by moving away, or as Tony Robbins calls it, just pain and pleasure, right? So we want to move away from pain and towards pleasure. Which one are we spending more time on? Are we spending all of our time and energy thinking about moving away from that nasty lion that's chasing me, metaphorical, whatever, or are we moving towards that?
Did you say that nasty lion seducing me?
Nasty lion chasing me, I said.
I thought you said seducing, serious.
That'd be weird. That'd be really weird. But I'd be transporting myself at a higher rate of speed, I think, then.
I think one would. Towards or away, though.
Yeah. Are you spending a lot of time focusing on avoiding pain or seeking pleasure? Yeah. That is a continuum. That's all I really wanted to say. Can you think of any good examples on that one?
Well, not really, no. But you came up with a really good point.
Let's move away from that one then.
Because you talked about present state versus target state, which we talked about in many podcasts. And what's interesting is we can see that on a continuum. How much closer are we to our target state? But we can also see it like John Grinder said. And he said, in reality, we're not moving towards our target state.
It's
we are
like
transforming the present state into the target state in increments. Yeah. We're always back to those damned increments.
And it doesn't matter how you think about transforming, but you're seeking out that target state. You're working on right now learning Hebrew and Greek.
Yes.
You're seeking a target state.
Right.
Rather than going, oh, I want to avoid having conversations with people because I'm not good at speaking or something like that. And
that'd be horrible.
Yeah, exactly. So you're building new skills while also maybe avoiding the bad stuff, right? Like if I don't, right now it's winter in Canada, I could be thinking about the pain of the cold frickin' weather and all the snow shoveling.
Yeah, but you're super fit. You can shovel really easy. I shoveled twice yesterday. Daytime and at night before I went to bed, because otherwise it would have been so freaking deep this morning. I would have just been in agony over here. Of course, I'm fit for 68, almost 69 years old too.
I was just relating to the idea that you could be thinking about moving away from something you don't enjoy, like cold weather, Ontario, northern climate.
Yeah.
I'm getting the heck out of here. I'm going to go to Florida or something, right? So I'm thinking about the escape, or am I thinking about the beautiful beaches that I'm going to be moving towards?
Well, even that's on a continuum, because if you were going further north up to Meaford,
it'd be really cold.
I'd
have to hang out with Brado.
It was like minus 15 coming in today, but it's probably like minus 25 up there.
Yeah.
And then you could start to feel better as you made your trip to, you're not looking at me, I'm telling you really interesting things.
You're trying to
reading your email. So heading down to Florida.
Yes.
Is it funny when you violate the rules? It's funny when I do it. It's like ends the podcast. So we're going to Florida. You might stop in Tennessee and go, it's warm enough here.
Yeah, I'm going to stop. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
that's true. Because obviously some people don't like the really hot weather. So
this is it. And that's a perfect time to stop for our special report. Tonight on the Cydonia Network.
This is the story of a man who loved to go fishing. A man who kept a wide array of fishing books and loved to tie Palomar knots in nylon fishing line, especially the type that became fluorescent in bright sunlight. One day, the man, whose name was Walter, went to fish for speckled trout in the cold and pristine stream near Aubergine Rapids, the place where he'd caught a 9-pound brook trout way back in the day. Walter packed a wide variety of size 1 and size 0 Mepps spinners, especially the copper kind that the brook trout loved so much. But the day was far stranger, because around the next bend, in the sparkling water, Walter was about to meet with an appointment. His appointment with destiny. His first 10 casts passed without incident, but cast number 11 snagged something, and Walter reeled it in. It was a small, thin, white balloon that someone had discarded. Walter befriended the balloon and took it home with him, placing it between the sheets of his own bunk. But that night, the balloon flooded the bed, and Walter drowned. The balloon abandoned Walter's saturated body and responded to his kindness by flying to the moon.
There once was a man in the middle of June who went out to fish on a bright afternoon. On that lovely day, he caught a balloon. They swore to be friends and they whistled a tune. The little white balloon, it flew to the moon. Now Walter is dead 'cause it flooded his bed.
The saga of the Little White Balloon. Season 2 begins tonight on the Durex Gossamer Network. Okay, we're back, and we've got a few more continuums or continua to focus on. Let's continue. We said we were going to talk about narrow versus wide focus. What I mean by that is if somebody has, let's say, a very wide focus, they could be thinking about their life as a whole. That's about as big as I think you can get on the continuum is I'm focused on my whole life. Or you could focus on the meal that I'm making for my family right now. Or this, I don't know, it could be something like this blog post that I'm writing or this video that I'm shooting or whatever it is.
Looming atomic war.
Yeah. Or there's so many aspects where this could apply, right? If you're applying it, you could be thinking about your career as the wide focus.
Okay.
Or you could narrow down and
one
go,
aspect
this
of the career.
Relationship with this one client that I know is going to make a difference. And I think this is one of those things where probably if you think of the continuum as a slider, you're probably going to move around a lot. There are times to focus and there are times to be wide angle and in fact, that's a good metaphor. Zoom lens, wide angle.
So zoom lens is when we're looking at the fine details, and then the wide angle is when we're just zooming out like Jack the Zoomer.
How often do you find that you take a very wide angle lens approach to something you're doing? You're a big picture guy.
Yeah, all the time.
And I should say, there are times when you can nail right down, zone right in on something.
Like if I'm looking for a piece of music for a specific moment.
Oh yeah,
like a recording. Yeah.
In fact, so we'll put a link in the description here because I'm sure it'll be out by the time this is published. Cydonia, the latest Hypnosis track that
the prequel to Journey to the Castle.
Journey to the Castle is free. MikeMandelHypnosis.com/castle. I'm not sure if we're going to just bundle the two. Anyway, go there. You might get Cydonia, or we'll put a link in the description so you can download Cydonia as well.
And you listen
at your own risk.
You
wrote a script, then you recorded it, then you selected all the music and
all the sound
effects, when you were looking at that script and thinking to yourself, okay, what kind of music do I want to go along with this? You're completely focused.
Yeah, you're right.
On
that is a zoom
thing.
in, and I know I'm massively large chunk guy, but you're right. As long as I go from large to minuscule, I can do that. I can't start with the small. As you know, when we use Slack in our business and you open Slack and
it just feels like,
easy. To me, it's a bundle of spaghetti. And I'm just going, what the F is this? You know, I just can't start there.
Yeah, actually, the bundle of spaghetti metaphor is perfect. You know what it made me think of?
Food?
Okay, so I have 2 daughters and they like jewelry. And over the years, there have been so many times where they'd come to me with some sort of little necklace thing.
Tangled.
That had, big freaking tangled ball of mess. Now, when you first look at that, you go, it's overwhelming. So if you take too wide of a focus sometimes, plural, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So what I have to do is zone in and be like, okay, I see one area where I use usually my fingers.
No. I'm a master at
needle
this.
is
Heather
a good
always sends
idea.
me, dude, I can get the most horrible knots undone.
But you have to zone in on
really
one
close.
little aspect, and you have to repeat that process over and over and over until you untangle the whole big massive ball of spaghetti.
They said testicular surgeons have the same problem. Do I go for the entire ensconcement that can be disenfranchised, or do I specialize in one area of the vas deferens tubes?
That is good. I really like that. That's very okay. I can't believe we worked that in so easily.
Was the actor
it actually fits in. It actually fits in really well with the sliced bologna incrementalism stuff that we've talked about in the past, right? Because if you think about a wide lens, there's too much. You need to zoom in and attack problems baby steps at a time. So in a sense, Are you doing a big chunk or are you zoomed in on a little chunk? There's your continuum. So
Nice.
think about where this applies to your life and see how it invites you to make some necessary changes. I think that is cool. We already talked about self versus other?
Yeah,
didn't we?
more or
So
less.
we can probably
Because
skip
the
that.
Enneagram 2 thing. Yeah.
So we've got a couple
What
more.
about easy versus difficult? I find this a really good one.
Yeah.
Laying on the couch versus building a better life.
Yeah. So if you are on the continuum at easy, if you're in the easy mode, you're kind of just doing nothing useful.
But that's interesting because my life is very much in easy mode. But I got a freaking awesome life.
Yeah, you do. But you had to work.
It took over 40 years of hard work to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that can actually be a part of the continuum of
for those listening.
Well, are you investing or are you reaping the benefits of the prior investment? So you had to make a big investment in your skills, right?
Yes, I
You
did.
practiced card effects, mentalism, hypnosis, public speaking.
Yeah. There was a hell of a lot of work.
Comedy, like being
Took the
entertaining.
Second City courses. Yeah.
So imagine if you hadn't done that. Well, you wouldn't be reaping the benefits of having an awesome life now.
Yeah.
Where it is mostly
Now, that's
easy.
a really good point because I had a friend of our family, we haven't seen in a couple of years. She actually said to me once, I was going to a gig at Centennial Hall, London or something, nice gig, do a hypnosis show. And she said, oh, you're lucky. Your job is so easy.
Yeah.
Now, she was working for
why don't you do
Microsoft
it?
at the time.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I said, well, you do it then.
Yeah, you
if
do
it's
it.
so easy.
And that is actually a really nice example of somebody who is kind of not taking responsibility for their own outcomes in life. Oh, well, you're lucky. You got the easy job. It's not my fault that I don't have those skills. I wasn't born that way, whatever. No, you worked your butt off to build those skills, okay? And anyone who has a skill set, maybe you're an amazing musician and you get to go out and just play awesome gigs at bars and people are throwing money at you and they love your guitar skills or whatever.
It's the same with the testicular surgeon. He didn't start there.
He didn't just open up a pile of spaghetti one day and go,
I'll
hey.
give you a hand with that. Pick up a scalpel, I'll give you a hand with that.
So there's a certain sense of doing the difficult things that will allow you to enjoy having an easier life later.
There you go. So you're focused on the difficult end of the spectrum.
Yes.
And over time, you can back off like Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
And then you're back to, now you can sort of engage in the benefits of what you've done. Nice,
and
nice.
that you can think of the same thing when it comes to
Hypnosis.
Yeah, I was going to say from a financial standpoint, if you are saving money and investing it and spending a lot of time thinking about what's the best thing to do with my money so that I have more later, you're struggling harder now. You have less to spend now
to build
so that you have
something
more later.
Yeah,
and that metaphor applies to anything. Your time, your relationships, your knowledge,
wide application, broad
all
application.
of that stuff, right? So easy versus difficult. The easiest thing in the world is to just sit down on the couch, lie down on the couch, and put on Netflix and go, yeah, okay, this is good.
Okay,
but
you're not way too well.
That was really funny. There's no value if you only spend your life in the easy lane the whole time.
Now, this is very interesting because you've inadvertently opened another window here that we weren't going to discuss. Factual information versus Ken Sweatman's story. One can start to become more and more detailed and not calibrate that the other person is zoned out in a trance and think that they're just so into the story. I should start packing in more and more detail.
That makes me think of learning Shakespeare in high school English and hating it because I was never skilled at that stuff. So I'd go to Cole's Notes.
Oh no!
Right, and
Cliff
that which is the non-Ken Sweatman-y, I guess. I mean, anyone who appreciates culture, unlike me, apparently I don't do very well.
Thunder, lightning, or in rain.
Yeah, there you go. So if you were to read a really long article on a topic versus say, hey, can you give me the summary points? Stick to the facts, but don't flesh it all out for me. Just give me the summary.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you don't want that if you're reading some wonderful story with cumulative sentences that are unpacking. Everything isn't strunk and white. Strunk and white is great for when you're writing copy or something. But a story, you want to be able to unpack all of that.
Fleshing it out.
Let's end with this. The hypnotic control room.
Well, actually,
easy versus difficult.
Before we do, let's make sure we very briefly touch on, we've done this before in podcasts, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on it.
Okay.
Saying yes versus saying no. Let's do that one real quick. So a lot of people say no. They say, no, we're not going to do it. If you say no to people all the time, you don't get the benefit of new experiences because you're always denying yourself the potential for new stuff in your life.
But
you're always saying
I'm glad
yes,
you brought that up because that was a key thing for me. And I realized that we call it black hatting something. You have a black hat and you just negative, 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 and it's 6 different colored hats.
That's a bad idea.
And my wife said to me, the number of times she'd ask me to do something, I don't think it's I've realized, or a friend would ask me to do something, and I've realized, as that CIA agent said in that podcast, he said, say yes more often. He said, your life will unpack and expand in all kinds of new directions, nude erections. And I started doing that. I've started saying yes to more things.
That's it.
And my life has gotten even better, if such a thing could even be conceived of.
But it's a really good example of, again, where if you say no all the time, your life probably is going to suck.
You're shutting freaking doors on yourself.
And if you say yes all the time, people are going to walk all over you.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to help me move this weekend?
Sure.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So that's, I think, all we need to say. But evaluate for yourself. Where is the biggest opportunity for you? Should you be saying more yes, or should you be saying more no? Yeah, I know that was weird.
That?
I don't know. I should be
clearly hissing sounds.
Yes, it's very weird. I need some water.
Reminds me of the Sigma letter in Greek. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Before we shoot our videos, I'm going to go drink some water. All right. So the last
hypnotic
one was
control. Now, here's an interesting thing. If you're adroit at hypnosis, as we are.
So how can you use all this in a hypnosis
session? Go into a hypnotic
state.
Find out, where are you? Go into the control room of your mind. Of course, it doesn't exist. Create one for the purpose of it. In a good trance.
Pick the spectrum that you want to adjust.
For things being easy or things being difficult, but with greater reward. I said reward. Greater reward. Turning Elmer frickin' Fudd now. So easy versus reward versus difficult, hassle versus reward. Because if you perceive the difficulty as just being a hassle instead of a reward, take a look at where on this continuum your needle is set and maybe move it towards difficult a little more, because the rewards will be concomitant with the result.
Excellent. And if you're a hypnotist, you can take this, you can have someone go through that guided imagery, enter the control room, and adjust a slider that represents the continuum that the client needs to adjust to an appropriate level.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's good, man.
All right. So that has been an amazing, fun podcast,
man.
Empowering question for episode 196. Do you want to
bring it on? No, you do.
Okay, I'll read it. Ask yourself, what are the continuums all around me, and what will I do today to maximize their positive effect on myself and those that I care about?
And for the Metafy, which is one better than a metaphor, I noticed 2 things when I was growing up. As a very young boy, about 7 years old, 2 things drove me into horrendous boredom. One of them was my mother liked to play Scrabble. She would play with a friend of hers in a quiet afternoon, and I would sit there in a chair, and the only sound would be the damn tiles clicking on the board. It was boring, monumentally boring, as we say in Britain. But there was a thing even worse. My mother had a friend, Violet. They called her Vi. And my mom never wanted to see her in person because Vi was monumentally boring, told long Ken Sweatman stories before there were Ken Sweatman stories. And these must have been Vi Sweatman stories. And the bottom line was, my mom made a point of only talking to her on the phone, thinking she could then disengage from her quicker by saying, oh, the house is on fire, I have to go. But that doesn't work. And nothing worked. And I would hear my mom attempting to disengage from her. And my mom, with her Manchester accent, she'd be on the phone, and she'd try to draw a close to the conversation after maybe an hour and 40 minutes. And I'd hear my mom going, right, okay then, I'll talk to you soon, Vi, that's great. Right, okay, yep. Anything you say, Vi. Right. Okay, bye. Bye now. There'd be 5 seconds pause. My mom would go, what? And the whole damn thing would start again.
Get an exit strategy. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been episode 196, all about continuums and spectrums and awesomeness and making your life better. I'm Chris Thompson. This is Mike Mandel, and we hope to see you again in the next podcast, which will be, I guess, 197, because it's a continuum.
2 weeks from today.
All right, so thanks again, and good night.
Okay, Chris, I'm going to give you a task. This is our exit.
Okay.
All the Johnnies in 30 seconds. You got to do them with me. Here we go. Ready?
Johnny Bortman, Johnny Latham Niotswo, Johnny Brookman Dingti Lasia, Johnny Suleiman Class Philo Aravantave, Johnny Tabby Q Tabapayu, Buktanazwan, Johnny Hit. Johnny Blickerton, Kurt Tempervine, Stentorion Alaklaka, Johnny Kelperlism, Johnny Melticlips, Johnny Chicken Raw Lips,
Johnny Balsamy Ploit, Johnny Baboon.
I didn't know that one. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of Johnnies. All right. Okay. All right, so
Continuums.
okay, so I'll start it off.
Well, yeah,
and
you've done
then,
a lot of work on this, so I think you're going to lead the sort of the trail,
Yeah,
the trailblazing, and I'll just throw in the hilarious comment.
when I was learning science and stuff like that, what's so funny?
I can't say.
Okay, Mike, I wanted to tell you, I don't like it when we're getting into the
can't
serious
help
part of the
it.
podcast.
Sometimes-
When we're getting into the serious part of the podcast, it
Sometimes-
pisses me
No,
off
but don't
when
do
you
it
do
on
that.
purpose. Sometimes when you're very, very serious, it's like in school when the teacher is very serious. It strikes me as inappropriately funny. So here, I'm going to rein it in. Go ahead.
You're going to have to,
Okay,
because
sorry, a state change.
there has to be value. I'm going to start over.
No, don't. We're going to keep it going. We're going to show that we're real. Keep
No,
going.
no.
Come on, buddy. Come on. I challenge you. Life is a series of
No.
continuums. Just everybody watching, you have amnesia for the last 90 seconds. Here we go.
So Ross, you're cutting out all that and
Save it
after
for
the
outtakes.
after the think tank words, Walter befriend. This is getting good. Okay, I love that this is okay now to laugh. All right, all right.
Help it.
I gotta get myself together here, Ross. Hold on, because it can't cut back in with me laughing. Walter befriended the balloon and took it home with him.
There's great outtakes here, Ross.
I know.